how I'd lose 30 pounds if I had to start all over again with weight loss. These are the 10 things that I'd personally focus on. I've actually lost 30 pounds before, sadly not all in one stint, but bit by bit. So I'm going to draw, of course, upon that experience and also offer some insights based on what I now know today that I do differently going back in my little proverbial time machine here to make the process certainly far more efficient, certainly a lot less stressful, and certainly also a lot less confusing. So if that sounds useful to you, buckle up. We'll get to the elephant in the room, which is this delicious looking diverse lunchtime plate. I'll walk you through the meal of the day as we always do here now in just a sec. The first thing I want to say though, this is not even one of the steps necessarily, but my attitude going into this, let's see if you resonate and then we know this video will be for you or not. My attitude going into this is not to lose this 30 pounds as quickly as possible. This isn't some challenge or detox weight loss sprint for me. I'd be thinking, how am I going to keep this 30 pounds off? I want to lose this in the first place, but I want to do this sustainably. I want to do this healthily. I want to do this in a way that actually works with my lifestyle and I change with it, rather than it being so domineering that actually it's only something I can do for a brief period of time, because I'm all about, it's a bit jargony, isn't it? It's a bit cliche. I'm all about the sustainability. So if that sounds like it's for you, buckle up. So as promised, meal of the day. What we got going on here? So we've got some bulgur wheat, which is a seriously underrated whole grain. Mix it up, guys. Brown rice, white rice, not technically a whole grain, but I got no problem with white rice, quinoa, they're all great. But bulgur wheat can be a nice way to change it up. I've got some of my baked tofu here that I so often do. We've got a little bit of watercress in the back here. We've got a little bit, let me rotate this one for you guys. We've got a little bit of the old red pepper here. We've got some sprouts. These are broccoli sprouts, chock full of nutrients. Got a bit of sauerkraut. Love my fermented veggies in these kinds of, I'm quite far away from the camera, right? These fermented veggies in my dishes, so some sauerkraut here. And then some hummus to finish. And of course, we'll do a little bit of the old hot sauce drizzled over the top. So yeah, I love these diverse plates. These keep me full for hours. 3 to 4 hours I don't think about food after I've had a meal like this. And no doubt as we do a little taste test here, I know you guys are going to ask about how I cook my tofu. I always get this question, so I'll put a link to my little recipe for tofu down below. But let's do a bit of the tofu for the taste test. Get a bit of the old bulgur, if you can catch some. Bit of the old bulgur wheat on there. Let's do a bit of pepper. Let's do some of our sprouties. Let's go for it. Come on then, let's do it. Excuse me, very uncivilized there. Nothing to say. Again, we go for good, not great here. I'm not spending hours in the kitchen. I'm not trying to make everything taste. I know this looks fancy, but it is literally just combined, bang, bang, bang. I had the spare tofu prep from yesterday. Bulgur wheat, I'm making a huge batch as I do my grains. Hummus lasts 3 to 4 days. Like, I know it looks fancy and elaborate. It's not. It's really simple. We're going for good, not great. We're going for practical over pretentious. That works for me. That's pretty good. It's a good 8 out of 10, not bad. Right, enough chit chat. Step number 1 then to lose these 30 pounds. Well, first of all, crucially, I would select my nutrition umbrella methodology, the approach with which I'd eat. I'd appreciate that weight loss still comes down to being in a calorie deficit. I'd have the understanding that there are many ways to peel an orange. There's many ways to be in a calorie deficit. But for me, of course, I'm going to go with the plant-based diet, knowing now what I know today. That is personally the easiest, most sustainable way that I've discovered to lose weight. I'm not unaware that people have criticisms of it. I'm not addressing or attempting to debunk or give my 2 cents on the validity of those in this video. That's not what this video is about. But for me, it's what's changed my life. So that's what I do. I find it a very simple and sustainable, of course, way to be in a calorie deficit. And I'll be doing my nice plant-based dishes like this. So that's step number 1 for me, is like, what's the umbrella approach with which I'm going to eat that's going to allow me to be in a calorie deficit every day? I'd consider arguments across my mind is made up now, but I would like to think fair Ryan, back in the day, fair old Ryan Adams would say, okay, let me consider all these arguments as I did back in the day. I'm not sure about all those fats with the keto and a lot of the anti-carb stuff. That seems very, very over the top to me. I'm not really with the intermittent fasting. I'm a big breakfast person, so let me skip over the intermittent fasting. I think it can have some value, but I don't really like it. I like to have my big breakfast. You know, I would go through and by process of elimination, I would see what kind of felt like the best approach to me. Now, of course, I have the ethical slant on the veganism aspect now, but yeah, that's how I would be thinking about this back in the day. So for me, step number one is really fully committing to this plant-based approach while simultaneously knowing that it's not going to work any kind of magic pill for me unless I'm in that calorie deficit. And step number two, of course, pertains very directly to step number one, because you're gonna find it hard to actually be in a calorie deficit if you're eating all that vegan junk. So for me, step number two, of course, and this applies even if you're not vegan, but for me, I'd be getting all of that junky stuff, or largely anyway, getting that junky stuff out of my diet. That's the stuff that has all of the nasties, the chemicals, the additives, with that high calorie content. And it's not just high calorie content, because I eat plenty of high calorie foods now, but they're high calorie whole foods that give me a lot of satisfaction and a lot of nutrients for those calories. I'm thinking nuts, seeds, avocado, etc. The tahini, for example, in my hummus here, right? These are very calorific, calorie dense plant foods, but they actually offer some nutrients and some good sort of bang for buck satisfaction, if that makes sense. But when I'm eating loads of the vegan burgers, and of course I've tested this, I'm not perfect clean eating all the time, but when I have those vegan burger patties and vegan Ben & Jerry's ice cream and vegan pizza and whatever little treats and desserts and things like that, wow, it tastes delicious, but you get so many calories, you get so little nutrients, and you get so little satisfaction for all of those calories because the fiber content's really low. As I say, the nutrients are really low. The volume of the thing is really, really small per calorie, if that makes sense. So yeah, step number two for me, in this growing world, because the marketplace understands very well, not the marketplace, excuse me, the industry and the manufacturers understand very well that there is a big marketplace demand increasingly for all this vegan stuff. And so whatever you say about the vegan trend dying off, it's quite clear when you walk into a supermarket pretty much worldwide now, that there's more and more vegan food products. And so I would have to make a bit of a pact with myself that although I know there's a new vegan burger coming out every month and there might be a new vegan fast food place opening in my city, you know, every couple of months, I have to make a pact with myself that no, we're focused mostly on the whole foods. Don't have to be perfect all the time, but you're really going to stunt your ability to get in a calorie deficit eating lots of all those vegan, sort of those new vegan junk products and whatnot. It's not going to be impossible, but you're going to have to eat such small portions of other food if you want to have like a big treat or a pizza in your diet every single day and still maintain a calorie deficit. Needless to say as well, like, I'm just viewing that from a weight loss perspective. What about your overall health and well-being? Having these things once in a while, we could say it makes no insane difference over health and fitness results, risk factors for major chronic disease, etc., etc. But doing that stuff every single day, I don't know, guys. Even if you lose weight doing it because you're aware of your calorie intake, I don't know. I don't know if you guys find this, there's something really cleansing about just eating raw pepper. It's the same as cucumber. I just love it. It's the high water content, it's the freshness. I'm not one that's like, oh, you need to eat all your veggies raw and cooking them destroys all the nutrients. Of course, it does reduce them. But I'm not one for all of that, but I must say, I really do appreciate from time to time a nice raw veggie. Excuse me, straight into step number 3 then, because this always comes up when I start talking about calories. Believe it or not, because you might be predicting with the way I've been talking about this that I'm about to do some calorie counting spiel and MyFitnessPal, chronometer, etc., and go into all of that. Step number 3 here, I actually personally, if I was doing this again, would not track my calories unless I plateaued. And that's how I did it the first time. That sort of 25-ish pounds that I lost in my first 12 months, so I didn't get to 30, but I lost 25 pounds in my first 3 months when I went vegan back in 2015. It was brilliant, it was like, boom. I didn't count a single calorie in that time. In fact, I haven't had multiple, I've done it as an experiment, but I haven't had multiple days since where I've tracked my calories using, like meticulously using MyFitnessPal. Now, I'm a coach, right? I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm not just a coach, I've been into this for a very long time. And I've counted calories 12 years ago for 18 months in a row. So I'm very good at eyeballing. I can look at the bulgur wheat and go, yeah, that's 210, 220 calories-ish. And it will be roughly, give or take, maybe 10%, because I've been doing this for a very long time. So that's the elephant in the room here. When I'm saying I wouldn't really track my calories, that isn't to say that I never pay attention to calories or I wouldn't care about calories. I have relatively good, as I say, calorie awareness. And so that's what I'd promote to you is, if you're thinking, oh, do I need to necessarily count my calories every single day to lose weight? No, but the solution is not ignorance is bliss. The solution is not burying your head in the sand and just trying to eat relatively healthily and hoping that you're in a calorie deficit. You need to know that you are. How do you know that you're in a calorie deficit? You're losing weight. You don't need to track your calories, guys. You're going to lose weight. So if week to week, you're actually regularly tracking your progress in a continuous fashion, so it's not random, you're not doing, what I mean by continuous, with continuity, of course, I'm not talking about you weigh yourself 6 a.m. Monday morning, and then the only other time you weigh yourself in a week is Friday at the gym at 8 p.m. after 3 meals. That's not going to be particularly, just having those two data points and 2 data points that are done at very different times of the day when there's all of this food volume in your system, not a great idea, guys. Not a great idea. So you want multiple weigh-ins through the week. I'll let you decide how you do them under the same parameters, the same circumstances. I suggest first thing in the morning, after you've been to the bathroom, clothless, nakies on the old scale. I know it sounds pretty over the top, sounds pretty pedantic, right? But that is going to control the conditions as best you can, because your body weight fluctuates quite a bit anyway. So you're best off making the conditions at least as controlled as you can to mitigate against some of that. And that's going to help you know if you're losing weight or not. And therefore, from that, you can infer whether or not you're in a calorie deficit. So what I would do is I would eat with the principles that I'm going to outline today and that I cover in all my other videos. I actually would start with the intention to not track calories. But if I saw the scale wasn't giving me what I wanted, as long as that was reasonable, of course, let's say that 1 to 2 pounds per week sort of sustainable ballpark that most people quite rightly, I think, refer to. If I wasn't in that ballpark, then I would be or I was just at a standstill, or I was even gaining weight despite eating lots of healthy whole plant foods. I would certainly then go, okay, let's jump on MyFitnessPal, let's jump on Chronometer, let's see where I'm at. Okay, this is maybe suggesting that I might be 200 or 300 calories over my maintenance. Let's have a look. Where are those calories coming from? Okay, there's a lot of nut butter here. There's a couple of medjool dates sneaking in. Wow, each medjool date, that's like 65, 70 calories. Okay, maybe I could cut 1 or 2 of those out and just knock a few calories down. Integrate that new plan, see what happens on the scale the next week. This is the great thing about the scale, is it's a feedback system. Yes, it can be a bit unreliable at times because of things like water retention and sodium, etc., etc. For my ladies, time of the month, etc., etc. However, generally speaking, it's going to give you some pretty good feedback as to whether your plan is actually putting you in that consistent calorie deficit or not. So step number 3, wouldn't track those calories, but that isn't me saying that I wouldn't have any calorie awareness. I'd still be thinking about them as I do to this day. I do, in my mind, think about how many calories I'm consuming in a day, but I'm not sitting there weighing and measuring everything and looking at MyFitnessPal and Chronometer and getting all neurotic about it. I don't think that's necessary. If it doesn't hurt your relationship with food, if it doesn't hurt your feelings, if you don't find it too laborious, of course, it's perfectly fine to track your calories. In fact, you would say it's a massive advantage because this offers a level of precision than my more, let's throw some mud at the wall, see what the scale does kind of approach, which admittedly, yeah, there are risks with that you spend maybe 4 or 5 days doing something and it doesn't actually work. Whereas with the calorie counting religiously, you are very unlikely, it's very efficient, you're very unlikely to waste a lot of time doing something that isn't actually working. So I'm man enough to say, hey, look, this is my philosophy. There are some downsides with it, and there might actually be a better way. But for me, I personally don't like tracking my calories. I ain't doing it unless I plateau. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's essential. Step number 4, my chosen carb sources. I mentioned the bulgur wheat here. I think I also talked about rice earlier on, but certainly rice and other whole grains I love as carbohydrate sources. Potato, that's both white and sweet potato, amazing. Oats, I love, mostly rolled oats, but steel cut, brilliant. And fruit, of course. And vegetables are actually, they deserve a sort of special shout out on their own, vegetables, but they're technically largely a carbohydrate source. So yeah, so when people are always, I'm sniggering, like bit of a personal joke, because when people always moan about carbohydrates, I'm like, you know, vegetables are largely carbohydrate, don't you? I mean, they've got really high water content, but in terms of their macronutrient breakdown, they're largely carbohydrate. People are like, oh, okay, yeah, broccoli, oh, yeah. You're gonna really put that in the same category as like soda? Carbs are bad. It's like, oh, what, you rot vegetables? Anywho, my main carb sources in terms of calorie content would be rice, potato, oats, fruit. Of course, other whole grains on occasion. And of course, every now and again, I do have some of those sort of slightly more processed food. Well, they are more processed foods. Things like whole wheat bread, rye bread, bit of sourdough. I love my healthy cereals, as you guys know. I miss my bran flakes from home. I haven't found any half-decent bran flakes here yet. Sadly, now I've relocated to Prague. But they're on my hit list. They'll be found. When there's a will, there's a way. So yeah, those are going to be my key carb sources. So some processed things I'm not automatically against, but this is another video, I'm not automatically against processed foods, but I'm mostly focused on those whole foods because, again, they're not only going to be highest in fiber, most nutrient rich. I mean, bran flakes are really high in fiber for a cereal, so that's why I make exception, whole wheat bread, etc. That's why I make exceptions for these things, because there is minimal processing. They're still relatively high in fiber. The caloric density is still relatively decent. So I make exceptions for some of these processed foods. But generally, this is the stuff that really, when I eat this stuff, it really does satisfy, fill me up the most. Greatest nutrient quantity. You could also argue quality. What does that mean? Maybe variety and diversity of nutrients as well from the whole foods rather than the processed stuff, even if it's relatively low in calories. All right, step 5, we knew this one was coming. I'm laughing already because there'll be someone that's like, oh, what about protein, mate? You're going to be one of those skinny wheat vegans. What about the protein? I mean, it's a reasonable question actually to ask, but my preferred protein sources, they're going to be things like tofu here and tempeh I often do, and I love my beans and lentils, as many of you will know if you've been following me for some time. Seitan is really absurdly high in protein but low in calories, so it's a really good sort of weight loss friendly food in that regard. It's harder to find actually now I'm here, but seitan is a pretty common go-to for me. And things like TVP can be brilliant as well, and obviously non-perishable, so that's stuff that can sit on your shelf for years. But we're going for balance here, guys. Let's not like the sacred protein macronutrient. I've already talked about carbohydrates. There are so many misunderstandings about carbohydrates. One of the misunderstandings about protein is that you need bloody loads of it, or rather that everyone needs bloody loads of it. What I've noticed in the last 10 years or so, certainly in the time I've been into this stuff, is how much gym bro and bodybuilding advice has sort of permeated into mainstream health, and I find that wildly inappropriate. Like, sometimes I'll have a 65-year-old woman sign up to me, and the woman is important, that's why I'm inserting it. They sign up to Slim and Sustain to work with me, and they're like, oh, my personal trainer told me I need like 140 grams of protein a day. And I'm like, sorry, you're 5'3"? Like, this is, you go to the gym once per week, you do about an average of 4,000 steps per day, you need how much protein? Like, that's absurd. And maybe that's an extreme example, but I do think protein is very overemphasized as a macronutrient. So this is a little bonus step. We're still on step number 5, which is protein sources, but a little bonus step here would be, we're going for these balanced plates, guys, that you often see me do. I'm not perfect with it. In fact, it was only a few videos ago where I showed a lower protein meal and talked about how I'm okay with a lower protein meal if I make it up. But generally, I want my bowls of food, I want my plates to look like this, where we've got the healthy carbohydrate sources, we've got the protein sources, we're going to talk about fat in a second, but fat, tahini, and the hummus here, and then we've got lots of, fruits and vegetables and those things that have sort of a greater vitamin and mineral profile and anti-inflammatory effect, antioxidants, berries, etc., around those macronutrient contributors, if that makes sense. So we're going for balance. Now, it's not as though you need the same amount of carbs, protein, fat in every meal or anything like that. Like, these need to be tweaked, but that's kind of more intermediate, advanced level nutrition knowledge than I want to cover in this video. But I like balance. But again, for weight loss, which is the point of this video before I get too sidetracked, it's this calorie deficit thing. It's no good having loads of protein in your diet if your calories are really, really high. So again, just this emphasis on protein all the time, it drives me a bit nuts. Step number 6, very quickly, key fat sources are things like nuts and seeds and avocado, and this has tahini in the hummus here, which is made from sesame seeds. So I'm having a little bit of healthy fat with most of my meals. And I stress a little bit because that's what I find to be very effective for weight loss. Because I eat quite a high/moderately high carbohydrate diet, I eat a moderate amount of protein. It doesn't actually give me a crazy amount of fat that I can eat. You know, again, in this hypothetical situation where I'm trying to lose me 30 pounds here and still maintain a calorie deficit. Because if I'm having lots of carbs, I'm having a decent amount of protein, and then I'm having loads of fat, the calories are just going ch-ch-ch. And as you very well likely know at this point, fat actually contains over double the amount of calories. A single gram of fat contains 9 calories, which is over double that of protein and carbohydrates at 4 calories per gram. Like, that's a lot. So if you think about that, if your fat is going up and your protein and carbs are pretty high, well, yeah, you're going to be eating quite a few calories there. So to get in that all-important calorie deficit, I'm going to keep my fat more on the low to moderately low scale, maybe more like 15 to 20% of my overall calorie intake. And again, it's coming from the sources I've just mentioned there. But, and I kind of meant to say this, but I got sidetracked with other points. Big shocker in standard Ryan fashion, right? But look at the fat source here on the plate. Like, this is considerably smaller than the other macronutrient contributors. And I think that probably tells you everything you need to know about how cautious I would be with my more fat-rich, even whole foods, in this proverbial 30-pound weight loss phase. I wouldn't be eating loads of it, but enough to reap the rewards. There are lots of proponents, there's lots of advocates in my community, the plant-based world, of an extremely low-fat diet, which I don't agree with. I think that is too extreme. You know, these healthy fat sources provide all sorts of benefits that are harder, and all sorts of nutrients that are a little bit harder to get from our other sources. So I do view our healthy fats here as being quote-unquote essential. But they're so calorific that you don't want to be lathering loads of nut butter on your toast every day and still expecting, oh, it's going to be easy for me to do this calorie deficit thing. No chance. Step 7, I think this is the first time we've talked about exercise in this video, if I'm not mistaken, but I would focus on a target of 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day. Lots and lots of walking. Maybe that's not lots and lots to you. You might be a nurse doing 12,000 steps per day just at work, and then you might come home and walk your dog, so you might get to 15 or 16,000 steps per day. It's all relative. But I find that for me, 6,000 to 8,000 be a really good starting point, and I'd actually then increase that if I were to hit a weight plateau. So I could sort of attack my calories a little bit if I hit a plateau. But I could also increase my step count to burn more calories on the back end, if that makes sense, without changing my nutrition all that much. But I would start with the target of maybe 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day. I've never been a fan of necessarily, you know, a lot of people, they'll set a step target, and I think that's really good by way of monitoring and measuring. I kind of like more of a range, so that's why I say the 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day. If there's a slightly lower activity day and it's more like 6,000, I don't freak out about it. For me, again, I'm programming these rules as I consider what's realistic. Not always what's the most effective for weight loss, because if I was thinking about that, well, I might be doing 5 spinning classes a week or Orange Theory. Like, I'd be doing the really high intensity stuff to burn calories. But again, we're all about sustainability here. Like, I don't just want to lose this 30 pounds. I want to lose this 30 pounds and I want to take my time with it. Not because I prefer weight loss that's slow, nobody bloody does, right? But because I prefer weight loss that stays. And I have, in my time, noticed that there's a pretty strong correlation between sort of slow and steady weight loss and sustainable weight loss. It's not a given. It's not a given, but I have noticed that correlation certainly in my behavior. So for me, starting out with just some walking in this very walkable city I live, well, that would be perfect in my little hypothetical weight loss scenario here. So I'd increase it if I was in a plateau. Maybe I'd look at 9, 10. Do I hit 12,000 steps per day if I start hitting some pretty stubborn plateaus? But that's what I'd start with. A little bit of walking. That's it for the cardio. Step number 8, walking wouldn't be the only thing that I do for movement forever, though. That's worth saying. I think in month 2, I'd start strength training. Now, admittedly, if this is you, maybe you're ready to start strength training right now, or maybe you already are. Well, there's no point regressing on that, right? But I think for me, I would see it as sort of a graduation in month 2. I'm thinking about old Ryan Adams. I'm thinking about lazy Ryan Adams. I'm thinking about Ryan Adams that, you know, gets home from work and he just wants to sort of lounge on the couch a little bit. If I knew that for the first month of this dedicated weight loss plan, I only had to do my little bit of walking, my 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day, well, that would be bliss for me, and it would be a really low barrier to entry. It wouldn't be such a high bar that it was off-putting or it required serious motivation right out the gate. So knowing me, I would definitely start with a really low barrier to entry, and I know a lot of you resonate. And then month 2, I'll say to myself, like, I am going to face this strength thing. I am going to get over my, gym intimidation. I mean, you can do perfectly successful, effective, strength workouts at home. But I might say to myself, I'm going to get over my gym angst and intimidation, working out in public. But we'll do that in week 2. We'll conquer that in week 2. Just like sort of negotiating with that little lazy, ill-disciplined gremlin in your brain. Maybe I'm being overly nice with this. Maybe I'm being too tactical about it. But this is how I play it. So I start my strength training in month 2. And even when I did start that strength training, it'd be very basic. I'd focus on full body workouts at first, which is not what I now do. But at first, again, old me, I'd do probably 2 to 3 full body workouts per week. So again, not in the gym every day or anything like that. You can see how tactical I'm being with this, like start small. Start small that's my message with this whole slow go thing. My clients will be nodding as they're watching this. They know my whole philosophy on this, but we start small and we gradually build up in time. Because if you start out with a lot of exercise, especially when you're in a dedicated weight loss phase, you can risk those crazy spikes in appetite that can make it really hard to know how much to eat. And that's really concerning, obviously. That's a bit scary when you're in a weight loss phase. It's okay at maintenance, or if you're trying to gain weight, you don't care too much. But when you're trying to lose weight, oh my God, and the appetite's going crazy after your long runs and CrossFit sessions, HIIT workouts and whatnot, like that's really scary for folks. I appreciate that. Like the risk of burnout or injury, if you're new to exercise and you suddenly start doing all these spinning classes and your tendons, your ligaments, your cardiovascular system simply hasn't built, adaptability to those things because you've just started doing them and you've been pretty sedentary all your life or for the last couple of years. Like, we see where this goes. I think my point's been made here. I question the sustainability of this stuff. So again, we're coming back to this theme of how can I lose these 30 pounds in a realistic, pragmatic, sustainable way for me personally? Not somebody else tells me the best way to burn calories is to go to the spinning class. Look at my Apple Watch, I burn 700 calories a session. You have to ignore the noise, guys, and just think, yeah, but what's the plan that I can actually stick to? And that's going to look a little different from the next person. I don't expect you to take my whole formula here and apply all of it. In fact, I'd advise against it. I say, that's really stupid. That's not personalized to you anywhere near enough, but hopefully at least gives you some ideas. So yeah, beginning strength training in month 2, 3 full body workouts per week. Step number 9, one fun, quote unquote, what does that mean? But one fun meal out per week, let's call it a cheat meal. Now, of course, I'd advise that when you go out for said cheat meal, it's still something relatively clean. I don't think you should be having a burger and desserts and a glass of wine. Have one single meal out per week. Have your fun. And this process, I find for me that it makes this process feel a lot more, again, I'm going to use a word I've said about 6 times, I think, in this video, but practical, again, another one of my buzzwords, like sustainability here. But it feels realistic for me, and it doesn't feel so boring. It doesn't feel like I have to, so Puritan, I have to be in my kitchen making homemade meals all the time, and I have to say no to all the social invites. I have that one fun meal out per week. I try not to make it like a big feast where I'm having drinks and desserts and that sort of thing, but I have that one meal, and I don't sweat it too much. Preferably, maybe like you go out to eat and it's a vegan veggie place and you have a nice healthy bowl like this, or you go for some sushi, like something that's pretty light, something that's pretty low in calories, something that's still pretty clean, but it feels fun because you don't have to cook it and it's a slightly different taste. It's something maybe a little bit more luxurious than you'd prepare at home, something a little bit more elaborate. Preferably it's something like that versus something that's like really deep fried, processed, vegan, junky fast food. But still, you could do that one meal every now and again, and it's not going to massively disrupt your progress over the week. Again, so long as you're not also having 2 beers with it, a glass of wine, desserts and appetizers and all of that. So I'd have that one fun meal out per week, and I'd see that as something that is actually on plan. I wouldn't even use the word cheat meal. It's actually on my plan. It's not even off track because it's something I've agreed to. But again, if you start start stretching the boundaries here, my clients will attest to this when they're being naughty. If they start to stretch the boundaries and they start going out 2, 3, 4 meals per week, that is going to start affecting your progress, even if you're making relatively decent choices. Not to mention all the sodium in all these meals outright, which doesn't make a difference from a fat loss perspective, but it can really mess with your head when you start stepping on the scale and you've got all this extra water in your system. So that's step number 9. And lastly, step number 10, when you have a craving, start with a bit of fruit. Start with a bit of fruit. There are problems with the sort of healthy substitution approach when it comes to cravings and dealing with cravings and things like emotional eating. There are problems with the healthy substitution approach because you could take a healthy food, but you're still engaging in the same behavior. And so, okay, we could say that if you're binge eating on fruit, which people don't tend to do, for a reason. But if you're binge eating on fruit versus binge eating on Ben and Jerry's, well, that's a huge step in the right direction. That's obviously healthier, of course it is. But you catch my drift, you're still feeding the same underlying behavior pattern at some point. If you're using the new healthy substitution still as the crutch and it's just replaced, like for like, the old food coping mechanism and all the old food associations. Well, at some point you have to say, okay, maybe I need to graduate from this now. Maybe my problem is I just need to learn to resist my cravings a bit better, rather than just feeding them with something slightly more nutritious. But having said that, I'm thinking about if I was 30 pounds heavier, I would consider myself more of a sort of beginner with this stuff. Where would I be at? Would I have as much food discipline and focus, the habit change, the gut bacteria change? You know, the palate, the taste bud change, etc., that I have today? No, right? Again, this hypothetical situation, I'm starting from scratch. I think if I had a craving, the best thing to tell my former self is just have a bit of fruit, right? Rather than going cold turkey, that's the point I was trying to get to. Rather than going cold turkey, there are other strategies. We can talk about delay, distract, decide, which is my 3D formula approach. There are lots of models for dealing with cravings that you can read about on the internet and in books and whatnot, and they're relatively decent. I'm not saying you need to use all of my strategy. It's got a cool name, the 3D formula, but delay, distract, decide. You can use that, but I really think as a beginner, if I just say to myself, Ryan, when you've got a craving and it's, you know, strong, and you're almost thinking about running to the store and grabbing said thing. For me, back in the day, it might be Millionaire Shortbread, or it might be Hobnob Biscuits, or it might be Pop-Tarts, which are disgusting, by the way, but I used to love them. It might be our Ben & Jerry's cookie dough, which I've referenced Ben & Jerry's a few times. I just think it'd be so easy to rationalize having a bit of fruit versus going cold turkey. So that's where I'd start. And like, worst things to worst, okay, that bit of fruit, let's say I have a banana, that's maybe an extra 90, 100, 110, 120 calories. All right, so what? It's a lot better than stuffing my face with Millionaire Shortbread. Right, and starting the proverbial sort of, or the potential rather, slippery slope that can often ensue when we have just one bit of junk food and we haven't actually improved our relationship with food that much yet. Like now I can have one bit of junk food and like I miss meals like this, so there's no risk or very little risk of the old slippery slope ensuing. But back then, 30 pounds heavier, starting from scratch, it's assumed that I've got much worse food habits. That's way too risky. I can't be flirting with the boundaries like that. I can't be doing too much sort of flexible dieting stuff. So for me, just better to say, right, let's have that 100 calories worth of fruit. Let's see if that hits the spot. And of course, if that doesn't work and you've still got the craving, like you need to work out ways to kick the can down the road a little bit. You'll need other strategies. But I think for me, my go-to when I had a craving, if it was really, really strong, just have a bit of fruit. And that's how I'd start. And then I'd have another bit, like if that didn't quell it, I'd have another bit of fruit. And it's just so much lower risk than going and eating something really, really indulgent. But I think the caveat, the warning, the disclaimer I'd give on this is what I said at the start, towards the start of this point, is healthy substitutions. I think they have their limitations, but I think that's how I'd start. So anytime I had a craving and it was really, really strong, it was coming on and I was ready to engage in one of my old bad habits, let's just have a nice bit of fruit. And for me, that's amazing because I love fruit anyway. So I like, and when you get delicious, sweet, fresh fruit, it really does feel like a little bit of a treat, I find. So something like a mango, there's, funnily enough, the Freudian, like, not Freudian slip, but that was unintentional. There is a mango there, and there isn't usually a mango there, but that's what I was thinking of, something really, for me, that is like a real treat. It's almost like a dessert. I know it might sound like I'm exaggerating, but for me, that's how much I like eating fruit. That a delicious sweet mango, that's like, wow, okay, that's a real treat for me. So something like that versus Pop-Tarts, yeah, it's going to be considerably better. So that's it. That's my game plan. As I say, don't think you should copy and paste this. It requires customization to you. Just going back to that point about like adherence, compliance, sustainability, you need to think about the game plan that will work for you, not the one that's going to create the fastest 30-pound weight loss, not the one that's going to get you the lean abs before your vacation in 6 weeks' time. Like, that's probably not enough time for most of you to lose any amount of weight over 10 pounds in 6 weeks' time. That would be ludicrous and ill-advised. But we're thinking again about sustainability. I'm going in circles, so I don't need to repeat this stuff. If you do want help implementing my whole formula here, you want to learn more about the whole Slim and Sustain, I haven't mentioned it too much, but the whole Slim and Sustain program, what I'm working on with my clients, what it looks like to work with me. If you want me to tell you exactly what, how much to eat, etc., etc. You like the kind of vaguer guidelines in this video. You agree with my philosophy, but you're kind of like, Ryan, I need you to just come in, tell me exactly what to do for food, exactly what to do for exercise, eliminate all the guesswork and the stress for me. You tell me what to do, Ryan. Hold me accountable every step of the way. If that all resonates with you, could be a really good time to learn more about Slim and Sustain. So I'll stick the link to that down below. As always, you've also got the link there to my free email list where I'm sending other tips and insights to your inbox every single week. Hope this was useful. It's really hard filming a video with this colorful little plate of delight sat in front of you. So I'm gonna lather this in some hot sauce, chow down, and then we're hitting the gym in about an hour or two. Okay, see you guys soon. Thanks for your time.